Welcome to the deep dive. You asked for it, and here we are diving deep into the state of education in Norway.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're looking at this recent government report, and wow, this is really fascinating stuff.
It is.
It's kind of like, like a State of the Union, but for classrooms.
Yeah, this report really tries to get at how, major societal shifts are impacting schools.
So paint the picture for us. What kind of big changes are we talking about, and how's Norway trying to keep up?
Well, imagine a world where, technology is evolving super fast, and artificial intelligence is, changing how we work.
Yeah.
And traditional jobs are being redefined.
Wow.
That's what Norway's dealing with, and it's putting a lot of pressure on their education system to, adapt.
So even with Norway's, traditionally strong education system, they're feeling the heat.
Exactly. The report acknowledges that the old ways of teaching just aren't going to cut it in this new world. They're looking for ways to give students more than just knowledge.
Yeah.
They need critical thinking skills.
Right.
Problem-solving abilities and adaptability to become lifelong learners.
You can't just memorize facts anymore, right? When everything's changing so quickly.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing this report isn't all sunshine and roses. What kind of challenges are they running into?
Well, one of the most surprising things I found was a decline in core subjects, especially reading.
Really? Even in Norway?
Yeah. And remember, Norway is known for high literacy rates.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a big deal.
Declining reading skills in Norway. What's the explanation for that?
Well, there are a few things. Recent studies like the PISA assessments.
Right. The international standardized tests.
Exactly. Those show that Norwegian students' reading performance has gone down compared to past years.
Interesting.
Even more concerning is the PRLS study, which focuses on reading enjoyment. It found that Norwegian kids are among the least enthusiastic about reading.
So it's not even just about being able to read, it's that they don't even want to.
Right. It's a tough combo.
Yeah.
And the report suggests this is partly because of another big challenge.
Okay.
The growing influence of socioeconomic background on academic achievement.
So even in a country known for being so egalitarian, they're seeing a gap between students from different socioeconomic backgrounds.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Wow.
The report found that students from wealthier families are consistently doing better than their peers from less privileged backgrounds. And what's even more worrisome is that this gap widens as students go through school.
So the playing field is not so level after all. That's a pretty big problem to solve. What else does the report highlight?
Another red flag is a sharp increase in kids missing school.
Oh, wow. Absenteeism.
Especially after the pandemic.
Yeah. What's behind that? Is the report pointing to any causes?
It seems like there are a few factors.
Okay.
For example, with 10th graders, the number of students missing a lot of school jumped from 9% to 15% in just a couple years.
That's a big jump. It makes me think about my own kids and all the time they spend on screens. The report talks a lot about digitalization, right? Does it connect that at all?
It does. And while it acknowledges the potential benefits of technology in education, the report does bring up some serious concerns about too much screen time.
What's the screen time situation like for Norwegian kids these days?
Well, over the past 10 years, there's been a massive spike in how much time students are spending on their devices outside of school.
Right.
And get this, when it comes to daily internet use, Norwegian students are #1 globally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of screen time. And the report is suggesting that this might be impacting, the declining performance we talked about and maybe even absenteeism.
It's definitely something they're thinking about.
Yeah.
The report suggests that all this screen time could be impacting concentration,
right,
sleep patterns, and even mental health.
Yeah.
Which could lead to those negative trends we've been discussing.
So we've got declining performance, widening socioeconomic gaps, rising absenteeism, and concerns about all this screen time.
Yeah.
That's a lot for Norway's education system to deal with.
It is.
I'm assuming, though, that the report doesn't just lay out all these problems. There must be some solutions, too.
You're absolutely right. The report lays out a pretty bold vision for what they're calling a more practical school.
Interesting. Ditching the textbooks and getting hands-on. I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
They're suggesting more experience-based learning, where students can apply what they're learning to real-world situations.
Okay.
So things like school gardens,
cool,
building projects, even Viking-themed activities.
Now you're talking. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any schools that are already doing this?
There are. The report highlights a few examples, like Vadmyra School in Bergen, where students are involved in running a school garden,
Hello?
from planning to harvesting.
Cool.
They connect their learning in science, math, and even business to this hands-on experience.
Awesome. So it's not just playing in the dirt. It's about applying knowledge in a real way.
Exactly.
What other examples are there?
Another one is Brancy School, where they've really embraced themed learning projects.
Okay.
They recently had a Viking unit where students built Viking ships in shop class.
Oh, wow.
They did archery and even made their own Thor's hammers.
This sounds amazing. I wish my school had been like that.
Yeah.
All right, so practical learning is one big idea. But how do they plan to tackle the whole digitalization thing?
They're promoting a more cautious and deliberate approach to technology in schools,
Okay.
really focusing on quality over novelty.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about banning technology completely,
Right.
but being really strategic about how it can be used to enhance learning.
So no more just throwing tablets at kids and hoping for the best.
Exactly. In fact, they recommend banning mobile phones during class time and breaks.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah,
That's a bold move.
it is. The goal is to encourage more face-to-face interaction, more physical activity, and of course, cut down on screen time.
Makes sense. But what about the elephant in the room, artificial intelligence? How does the report address that?
They have a whole section on it.
Okay.
They emphasize teaching students not just how to use AI, but how to understand it,
Okay.
its potential biases, and how to use it ethically.
So it's about raising a generation of AI-savvy citizens, not just users.
Exactly. They're really stressing the importance of transparency and understanding of AI algorithms to avoid discrimination and bias.
Yeah, as AI becomes more integrated into our lives, that's super important.
It is.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Societal shifts impacting education in Norway, the challenges they're facing, and some pretty big solutions.
Yeah.
This report really doesn't shy away from the hard questions.
It doesn't. It's fascinating.
They're approaching this with a real commitment to innovation and a willingness to think outside the box.
Right.
Before we move on to the next part, let's just quickly recap what we've learned so far.
Okay, so we've seen that even a country like Norway, with its great reputation for education, is facing some serious challenges.
Yeah.
Declining performance in core subjects, widening socioeconomic gaps,
Yeah.
and the complexities of all this digitalization.
Right, but they're not giving up.
No.
They're tackling these challenges head on, investing in practical learning,
Right.
rethinking their relationship with technology,
Yeah.
and putting a priority on teacher well-being and giving students a voice.
That's right.
It'll be interesting to see how they plan to put all this into action.
Absolutely.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into the specifics of their recommendations and what it all means for the future of education, not just in Norway,
Right.
but maybe for all of us. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We've talked about the challenges and that big picture vision, but the report doesn't stop there. It actually gets into the nitty-gritty of how to make this happen.
Okay, so what specifically are they suggesting?
One thing they propose is to make those national centers that help teachers with different subjects even stronger.
Okay, can you remind me what those national centers do?
Sure. So you've got the Reading Center, the Math Center, the Science Center.
Right.
Think of them as like hubs of expertise. They provide teachers with, research-based resources,
Okay.
professional development opportunities, and practical strategies to use the new curriculum.
So if a teacher is like feeling overwhelmed by having to teach science in this new hands-on way,
Right.
they can go to the Science Center and be like, help.
Exactly. They're there to help teachers actually put the curriculum into practice in their classrooms.
I like that. It's not just telling teachers what to do, it's giving them the tools and support to actually do it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's not just about support for specific subjects, right?
No.
The report also talks about changing how schools think about technology overall.
Yeah. One of the biggest things they want to see is moving away from that technology for technology's sake mindset, and instead having a much more cautious and deliberate approach to digitalization.
We talked earlier about quality over novelty, but how do they actually suggest making that happen?
Well, one key recommendation is to invest in professional development for teachers,
Okay.
specifically the area of digital pedagogy.
So helping teachers be more thoughtful about the educational technology they use.
Exactly. Like choosing tools that actually enhance learning and knowing how to use them well.
That makes sense. But what about the ethical side of technology, especially with AI?
You're right. That's a really important point.
Yeah.
The report stresses how important it is to teach students about AI, its potential biases, and how to use it responsibly.
So it's not just about how to code, but like how to think critically about the implications of the technology.
Exactly.
How do they suggest doing that?
Well, they recommend developing specific teaching materials focused on AI ethics and critical thinking.
So teachers have the resources to have those important conversations with students.
Right, like about data privacy and algorithmic bias.
But it's not just about the classroom, right?
No.
What about making sure everyone has access to technology in the first place?
Absolutely. They emphasize that all students need equal access, regardless of their background or socioeconomic status. They even talk about providing digital literacy training for parents and families.
It's about making sure everyone has the same opportunities.
Right, creating a more inclusive and equitable learning environment.
Okay, so we've got strengthening those national centers, promoting digital competence among teachers, addressing the ethical side of AI and bridging the digital divide.
Yeah.
What other big ideas does the report talk about?
One that stood out to me is the proposal for a national center for vocational training.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
So this center would be all about supporting and promoting vocational education and training.
Okay.
Which fits in with that emphasis on hands-on practical learning that we talked about earlier.
So they're trying to raise the profile of vocational education?
Exactly. They're recognizing that not all students do well in a traditional academic setting.
Right.
And that for some, a hands-on approach is better.
Yeah, we often prioritize those academic pathways, but this report seems to be questioning that.
They are. They're saying there are lots of different paths to success, and vocational education is a good option for many students.
It's about offering more choices and making sure all paths are valued.
Exactly. And it also lines up with the government's goal of preparing students for a workforce that's constantly changing.
Right. With automation, AI, the jobs of the future are going to need different skills than the jobs of the past.
Exactly. And the report recognizes that the education system needs to be more flexible and adaptable.
So it's about giving students those foundational skills to be lifelong learners.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
They're emphasizing things like critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and creativity.
Those are skills that are valuable in any field.
Exactly.
And those are skills that can be developed through both academic and vocational pathways.
Right. It's about a more well-rounded approach to education that values different learning styles and prepares students for a lot of possibilities.
Okay. Some pretty big ideas here.
Yeah.
But how will they know if these reforms are working?
Well, they actually suggest a pretty major overhaul of the school evaluation system.
What's wrong with the current system?
They argue that it focuses too much on standardized testing and doesn't show the whole picture of what's happening in schools.
So they want to move away from just looking at academic achievement?
Right. It's about also looking at things like student well-being, the school environment, and how effective the teaching is.
So moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. They're suggesting a more nuanced system.
Okay.
That captures the complexity of teaching and learning.
That makes sense.
And they emphasize the importance of schools having more freedom and flexibility to develop their own ways of evaluating themselves.
Trusting educators to be professionals.
Exactly.
And to tailor things to their specific students.
Right. They think this will lead to a more dynamic and innovative education system.
Okay, so a lot of promising ideas.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Are there any potential roadblocks that they talk about?
Of course. Any big reform is going to face challenges.
Right.
And they acknowledge that one of the biggest hurdles is funding.
Yes. The eternal struggle.
They're very clear that these goals require significant financial investment from the government.
Yeah. Especially in tough economic times, that can be hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they emphasize that the money needs to be used efficiently and fairly.
Right. Making sure it goes to the schools and students who need it most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What other challenges did they bring up?
Yeah. Are there any others?
Another big one is teacher shortages.
Especially in certain areas.
Yeah, like in rural areas and in certain subjects.
That's a problem everywhere.
It is. And the report suggests a few things to try to attract and keep good teachers.
Okay.
Like offering competitive salaries, providing professional development opportunities, and creating more supportive work environments.
So basically making teaching a more attractive job.
Right.
Makes sense.
And they also talk about addressing teacher burnout.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Especially with all the pressure from the pandemic and these new reforms.
So it's not about giving teachers more to do, but giving them the support to deal with it all.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that investing in teachers is essential for the future of education.
Okay, so funding teacher shortages, teacher burnout, anything else?
They also anticipate some pushback to these changes.
Yeah, I mean, change is hard.
Right. People are comfortable with the way things are.
It makes sense that there will be some resistance.
The report acknowledges that implementing these changes will take careful planning, clear communication, and a willingness to listen to people's concerns.
It's about getting everyone on board.
Exactly. Students, parents, teachers, administrators, policymakers, the community.
It's a team effort.
Everyone has a role to play in shaping the future of education.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot in this part of our deep dive. It seems like Norway has a good plan, but also a realistic understanding of what they're up against.
I agree.
Yeah.
It can be interesting to see how they actually put these plans into action.
Yeah. Before we move on to the last part of our deep dive, let's just take a minute to think about what we've learned.
Okay, so we've seen how Norway is being really proactive in dealing with the challenges in their education system.
Right.
They're putting money into practical learning, rethinking technology, and focusing on supporting teachers and making sure students have a voice.
And they're doing it all with a focus on fairness and preparing students for a complex future.
Exactly.
But the big question is, will it work?
That's what we'll explore in the final part.
So stay tuned as we look at the potential impact of these reforms and what it all means for the future of education, not just in Norway, but maybe for all of us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent this episode unpacking this Norwegian government report on the state of their education system.
Yeah, a lot of information. We've covered a lot of ground, from declining reading scores to AI in the classroom to even building Viking ships in shop class.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
But before we send you off on your own Viking adventures, let's step back for a minute and think about the big picture. What are the key takeaways from all this? What does it all mean, not just for Norway, but for education everywhere?
Well, I think one of the big things is that even a country with a great education system like Norway is feeling the pressure to change.
Yeah, it seems like the challenges they're facing are pretty universal, like technology, the socioeconomic gap, the need for more engaging learning.
Right. It's not just a Norway thing.
And that focus on being proactive. I think that's something we can all learn from.
Yeah, you can't just react to change. You have to anticipate it and design systems that are flexible.
That's a good point. Future-proofing education. It's about giving students the skills they'll need for a future we can't even imagine.
Exactly. And the report's focus on a holistic approach to education is also something I think is really important.
Yeah.
They're not just looking at test scores.
Yeah, right.
They're also thinking about student well-being, social emotional learning, and creating a more inclusive environment for everyone.
And that's definitely something we're seeing more of globally, that education is about more than just grades.
Right. It's about helping kids become well-rounded people who can deal with a complex world.
Exactly. It's about critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, all those skills that will always be important.
Right. No matter how much technology changes, those human skills are still essential.
And this report really highlights how important teachers are in making all this happen.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about giving teachers the tools and support to be leaders of change.
Not just following orders from above.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. We've seen some big challenges, but also some really smart solutions.
I agree. It's encouraging to see them taking this seriously.
What are you taking away from this?
For me, the biggest question is about balance. How do we balance digital literacy with concerns about screen time? How do we use AI ethically? How do we personalize learning while making sure everyone has the same opportunities?
Tough questions.
Yeah, these are questions that everyone is grappling with.
But the fact that we're having these conversations, that we're learning from each other and trying new things, that's what gives me hope.
Yeah, me too. It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring these questions, maybe do some research on what's happening in your own community, or talk to some teachers about it.
Even small actions can make a difference.
That's right. Well, that's a wrap for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.